I just thought this was really fascinating, looking at beautiful Montana. And so, for example, if you make, if your household has $55,480 of income, you're in the 51st percentile. Of course, 100,000. So if you're at 200,000, the voice starts going up here. 197, you're in the 96th percentile. That means only 4% of the population makes more money, more household income. So the median income in Montana, household income is about $50,000. Median household income, that's the middle. For the US, it's about 79,000. Montana is pretty low income. And there's some areas that just, they have to make more money. Huh? Go see. What's that? You want to see 1%? 0%. 0% is about as low as you can get. Let's go to 1. 0 is 1%. 2, $1,600 a year. Wow. All right. So we got to this, didn't we?
No. We did
I
not.
know.
We're finishing here.
Close to what we just broke down.
What are we behind?
You told us your chili story.
I told you the chili story. Oh. So do you want to hear the assassination story very quickly?
Yeah.
So we have the different candidates. Remember, just a quick review. Oh, what was Roosevelt's 1904 progressive platform called? Square deal. And that Kepler Act, remember Reclamation Act, conservation. Did I tell you anything about conservation?
Yeah.
About dams?
Yeah.
And don't forget, water runs out to the sea and it's wasted. You conserve it behind a dam. Conservation. And then we have Taft. And then Panic of 1907, Taft. We have to go fast. Oh, then in 1912, what was Roosevelt's progressive platform? That was kind of socialist. New what? Yeah, new nationalism. What was Wilson's? New freedom. And Debs jumped in the race. Oh, what was Roosevelt's party called? Because he said he's as fit as a bull moose. And so, let's get going on this. That's the very quick review. So we got this, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Teddy Roosevelt went on a campaign trip to Milwaukee, and he was campaigning energetically. He was going to give a speech out of the auditorium, and he was a prodigious writer. He could easily write 20 pages in no time at all. And did I mention he had a photographic memory? So he would write, he had about a 25-page speech that he hand wrote, but by writing it, it was memorized. And this would be something he would do. He would write his speech out and put it in his pocket. Got the image in the pocket. So fold it up, 25 pages, fold it up in his pocket. And then when he was writing there to give the speech, I don't have pictures of that, but I do have pictures from my Lego presidential assassination book. And so there he is on the way. He is writing to the auditorium, and a guy named John Schrenk stepped out with a black powder pistol. Here he is. You look at this dramatic picture right there of him stepping out, and from about 5 feet away, he opened fire and shot him right here. Okay, black powder moves a little bit slower, but it didn't penetrate his heart because of what? The speech slowed it down. And so it only lodged between 2 ribs and didn't penetrate his heart. And so Roosevelt is hit. And look at the Lego blood. Wouldn't that be a great little kit? You know, they have all kinds of Lego setups, the Lego presidential assassinations kits. That would be awesome. But he said, I'm not going to the hospital. They continued to drive him to the auditorium, and he got up there covered with blood, and blood was still pooling around his feet. He did and gave his speech. And when he came up and said, you're like, how are you? What's up, Mr. President? He says, it takes a lot more than a bullet to stop a bull moose. And proceeded to give an hour-long speech and then went to the doctor. They did one, the x-rays are brand new, and it was so close to the heart, they could not remove it. So he'd spend the rest of his life with a bullet lodged between his ribs, which had to hurt. And he's already blinded in one eye. He would die pretty young. Well, there's the headline for the Milwaukee Sentinel. I just found out later. They don't mince any words there. Roosevelt actually jumped out of the car with it here and grabbed him and said, "Why did you do that? What were you thinking?" And Shrek just stared at him, kind of. And so he basically just kind of tossed it aside and went.
The logo looks so.
Yeah, it's almost the same person.
It is.
I was laughing at you. So, if you ever see a picture like this, no, he did not ride a moose. Well, this is probably pre-AI. It's not AI slop, but so that came from this. Somebody old school cut and paste. So they cut a picture out, they put it on another picture, took another, then a photograph of it, of Wilson on a donkey, Roosevelt riding a moose, Taft riding an elephant. When the election finally happened, Wilson didn't campaign much because the Republicans were split. And Debs voters, they liked Debs. Debs would get 1 million votes. But they knew a vote for him would probably be wasted because it's winner take all. And so when the election finally happened, it went to Wilson. Wilson would win, and he would only get 42% of the popular vote. But remember, the popular vote does not matter. All that matters is the popular vote in each state, winner take all for all the electors and electors in the state. So here's a pretty good cartoon that shows what happened. Elephant divided by, so Republicans divided by the most party, made sure that Wilson would win. And it did. And Debs voters probably voted mostly for Roosevelt too. And so that hurt Debs count, got Roosevelt more votes, but not enough to win many electoral votes. When the election finally happened, Wilson's in green. Remember, this is the solid South. There are no Republican voters pretty much in the South. So they all voted Democratic. And then with the Republicans split. So Roosevelt was really popular in Montana, but that allowed Wilson to win. And Debs was really popular in Montana too. And so they got Roosevelt with a lot of votes, but Wilson to win the state. So Wilson only got 42%. Roosevelt got 27.5%. It says minor parties, but almost all the minor parties went to Debs. But no electoral votes. I mean, heck, only one state, or I'm sorry, only 8 electoral votes went to Taft. So, do you want to hear the story of the teddy bear? I put this down because I kept forgetting his name. You don't have to write this down. I just kept forgetting Longino's name. And it's not that important of a name for outside of Mississippi, but he was the governor of Mississippi. By the way, I just told you what political party was Longino in 1902 in the South. It's a Democrat. There's no Republicans in this. If you're asking that today, you'd probably guess Republican. The Republican Party is not only very much a Southern party today, it dominates itself. But today, back then, Democratic. And he invited Roosevelt for a hunting trip. Roosevelt wanted to get an eastern black bear, slightly different species in the South, and they were going extinct, and he wanted to shoot one before they all died. Remember his vision of conservation. Save it for now so he could kill it later. And so he wanted to shoot a bear for a trophy. And Longino took him down there, and a bunch of others came down. Here's Roosevelt, this is actually the 1890s. But here's a picture of him hunting for a bar. And, as I put down GUV, yeah, I was into abbreviations. He couldn't find one. No, just go. He's not GOP, he's not. One, he doesn't know. Go.
But like, why not?
That's just one. So. Everybody else had shot one of the few bears left. And they found the hunting dogs had run a yearly cub into some water that was kind of floundering. And they were able to kind of force it out, and someone got a lasso around the bear's neck, and they tied the bear to a tree. And then they told Roosevelt, "We got your bear. We got your bear. You can shoot your bear." And so here's a picture of the bear just hiking normally through the forest, and then they got him. But no, they had a yearling cub, and Roosevelt couldn't do it. He couldn't shoot it. He was a sportsman as he saw it, and that would be unsportsmanlike and cruel to shoot that bear. And so the story got out that he saved the bear. And it made all the news because remember, whatever the president does is news. And so the Washington Post, a political cartoonist, put this out, drawing the line in Mississippi of saving the bear. A toy company in Vermont was in the process of making a toy bear. Was making a toy bear, and they jumped on the publicity in this. They called the first ever one of theirs, a teddy bear and a name. And that's where the name teddy bear came from. Because Roosevelt would not kill the bear. Now, of course, the people that were hunting with Roosevelt were appalled that he would not shoot the bear, so they shot him. They killed the bear and would stuff it and send it to the White House. Because it was alive. Hey, would you like some homework? I forgot to assign this. So, everyone grab one of these. Everyone grab one. So, if you go to the second to last page, is a map. Did everyone not grab one? Who did not grab one? Here's 3. Figure it out. 2. Got one? Awesome. All right, you go to the second last page, there's a map. This is a bunch of stuff we're doing on World War I, the 20, the Treaty of Versailles, which will make great one. So you see the map, there are 2 maps. The World War I map, so it's the size when the war is going on, and then the post-World War I map. So we got to do a little bit of European history because the United States will forever be involved in European history. Or European politics, and therefore dramatically affect the United States. So we got to know how Europe changed. And World War I would literally change everything. So that is what it's due on Monday. I'm not being assigned tomorrow, but I'm assigning right now. And it's a dramatically different world. When you're doing this map, the directions are on top. And this is not before the war. This is World War I during the war. So the Central Powers on one side, the Allies were on the other. If you look at that wonderful map over there, the beat up old map that I'm going to make last. So the pink ones are the Central Powers. They're going out. Most of the other countries are out. All right. Put that away. Are you taking a picture of my map? Huh? I have that copy. Yes, you can take a picture. Not do it. Do my class. All right. It's a very good map, but it's really sort of all right. So let's go get to Wilson being president. Wilson is president, and Wilson would very much equal the progressive era. And of all the elements of the contradictions of being for social justice, this cartoon shows. And remember, social justice was enlarging the middle class. We make the community stronger over profit by having more people benefiting from society, and therefore they'll be less likely to revolt. More people who feel part of the system. So, social justice, and also shows other contradictions. We have a democratic progressives, and we have Republican progressives, even though I should add, by the 1920s, the progressive wing of the Republican Party would die. And the Republican Party would be pretty much only conservative. And the Democrats would become, actually, Democrats got pretty conservative too. We'll come back to it. There'll be kind of a, it would seem to be called liberal wing of the Republicans for a while, like Dwight Eisenhower, but that's pretty much all gone now. So back to this. Two constitutional amendments have been winding their way through the states, beginning with Taft and Roosevelt. So Wilson was president. I didn't put the year, put down 1913. Two amendments. The 16th Amendment would allow for an income tax. The Supreme Court, in a very questionable ruling, they were conservatives and didn't like income taxes, said that income taxes were unconstitutional. And the 17th Amendment, direct election of senators, meaning the people, voters in each state will pick the senators. And what that means is that no more state assembly. Montana would be the test example of how corrupt the system was. When William Clark gave every member of the Montana State Assembly $1,000 to vote for him. So they said, Montana is so corrupt. That is a classic example of what we cannot allow. Hey, Montana, we're in the news. And don't forget, amendments are really difficult. They require 2/3 of the House and the Senate. It has to be signed by the president and then approved by 3/4 of the states. That's why there hasn't been an amendment for 34 years. Right now, it's really hard. This is one about the income tax. And this will then directly tie in, oh, there's going to be two more progressive amendments, but we'll get to those in World War I, the 18th and 19th. Because they fit in directly with the war. So, Wilson's progressive agenda. The first part will be the Underwood tariff. So with the 16th Amendment, they could lower the tariff and sign the first income tax since the Civil War. It would be a progressive tax, meaning tax rates would go up for what kind of people? Yeah, higher income. Basically, there was no tax for anybody, no income until you got to $500,000 in today's money. Then there's a 4% tax. It would go up dramatically. And so tariff reduction, tariff raise all prices. So that would be a little bit of a cut in prices for people. Citizens pay the tariff. Company, remember tariffs. The importers, the companies that import goods pay the tariff, and then they pass the cost on to consumers with higher prices. The tariffs in the last year was about, per household, about $1,700 to $2,000 a year tax increase for every home in America. Each individual person about $1,000. So that's what we have now. Just to give you an example, and relates past to today. Another one would be the Clinton Antitrust Act, and this is huge. The Clinton Antitrust Act was strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act. Let's see if we remember. Which one, Wilson or Roosevelt, thought that all monopolies were bad? Yeah, that's Wilson. Very good. Roosevelt thought there's some good monopolies. The big thing it did, though, is it created the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, the most important regulatory body to regulate. Okay, it's supposed to say it regulated trade. It's supposed to be ED. It regulated trade. Let me backtrack here. Regulate restraint of trade. I'm sorry. How did that happen? I'm so crushed by this. There we go. Regulated illegal restraint of trade. What is illegal restraint of trade? That's monopolies. Companies using their market power to gouge people, to extort money, to rig the market so they make more. And the other way they do it is the FTC can stop mergers. So they can stop two companies from joining together to create a monopoly. So the FTC has great power. And therefore, if the president is pro-monopoly or doesn't mind monopolies, they figure that is fine, meaning more conservative economically. But put people on the FTC that won't really regulate this. If the president is anti-monopoly, they put people that would be pretty strong. And so in your lifetime, there has been, were you born, who was born, no one in 1909. No one in 1909, right? Nobody was born in 2009. Oh, so we have a few? But some of you were born with, how about 2008? So you were all born, Bush was your president in 2008. 2009, either Bush or Obama, right? Bush had no problem with monopolies. Obama was pretty economically conservative, and so actually didn't do much about monopolies. Trump did not care at all, like monopolies. Biden was the first president in about 50 years to really try to slow down monopolies. And now it's an unfettered version of economies. That's what we're at. Why? Because Trump was very conservative. Obama was pretty conservative economically. Biden used to be really conservative, but on this, he got a little bit more liberal economics. So, don't forget, one of the big issues of the progressives, antitrust. FTC is huge. Next, the Keith Nolan's Act. And this was to stop child labor. But immediately a lawsuit came out to say this was an illegal, this affected companies' ability to sign contracts, and it would be found unconstitutional. This decision is called the Lochner decision. So we call this era of the Supreme Court the Lochner era, which means very conservative economically, meaning pro-laissez-faire, anti-regulation. The Supreme Court and the Lochner era would go all the way up to the 1930s. It was the Lochner ruling said child labor restrictions were unconstitutional. It would not be until the New Deal 1938, it's called the Fair Labor Standards Act, that would set limitations on child labor. But states still have a lot of leeway. Remember federalism. In the last year, a lot of states have been weakening child labor laws to allow it to be easier to hire kids. The big thing are southern states to get younger people to work in slaughterhouses. It's purely for slaughterhouses to let 13, 14-year-olds work 40-hour weeks. I mean, that's the way it is. So like Arkansas, places like that. So another one of the biggies was the Federal Reserve Act. I should add, weakening child labor laws, that's conservative economics. It's conservative. So child labor laws are Federal Reserve Act. This is an effort to come back to the national bank. It's not Hamilton's national bank. It's not the national bank of Nicholas Biddle and the bank war with Jackson. And what it was, it set up the entire financial system under the Federal Reserve System, which divided the country into 12 districts. 12 districts. And every bank in these districts has to agree to join this district. And if they do, they have access to Federal Reserve money. They're in a system to borrow money, to loan money to other banks. It sets up a whole elaborate system. But if you agree to be in this system, which is beneficial for banks, then they can regulate. So you can borrow money from the Federal Reserve, or it's a system set up to loan money or borrow money from other banks. Really important. So if you look at these 12 districts, Montana is in the Minneapolis district. So there is a branch of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank in Helena. If you go by the Civic Center, right across from Women's Park, there's a big bank right there. That is from the Federal Reserve Bank of the Minneapolis district. That's in Helena. Yeah.
Why is District 12 so big and then District 2 is like 3 states?
And it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Because if you think about the relative population now of California, well, that's because there's an air West and not many people. And they haven't changed that. Probably what they should do is divide it in two at least.
Yeah, so like, would they ever reevaluate the districts?
There's been a couple efforts, but they've always fallen. Because there's one thing about that. Since this banking district is so big, that gives the person in charge that a lot of power. But they should divide it up. Even though the most important bank, as you can guess, New York City. Every time a bank makes a transaction, every single time. So puts money out for a loan, takes money from a savings account, it goes into the database, it goes to the Federal Reserve. Everything. So now most transactions are electronic. goes right to them. And so even though there isn't like money now out there in circulation, it's all electronic, it's on a computer screen. That's what we call power. But the Federal Reserve then will issue currency. Does anyone have a dollar? Anyone have some money? That's some money?
Yeah.
You have money in your stock? No one has any money? No one has money? How about credit card? Have any of the wealth? Have any title deeds to land? Here's some money right here. Everyone got that? Okay. So let's get back to work. The Federal Reserve note. I'll give it back, I promise. With interest. If you notice on top, you ever look, it says Federal Reserve note. Federal Reserve note. That means it is issued by the Federal Reserve System. So all currency has to go through the Federal Reserve System, then it's engraved by the Bureau of Currency. Federal Reserve note. What president's on the $1 bill? Washington. Who's on the 5?
Lincoln.
Who's on the 10? Who's on the 50? Oh, I'm sorry, who's on the 20? Jackson. Who's on the 50? Grant. Who's on the 100? I heard about 25 different names. Benjamin Franklin. So, Franklin was not president. Hamilton was not president. Oh, by total just number of bills out there. Which unit of currency has the most just bills out there? 1, 5, tons. Drug money. It's all drug, it's all legal money. It's in $100 bills. And we're talking but almost all the money is electronic. And it goes through the system. And so it doesn't have total control of the money supply because it's so electronic, but the Federal Reserve has great power here. The Federal Reserve Board, so the head of it, there's also a voting board, and then the heads of the banks, they decide interest rates. Not 100%. They can basically push interest rates up or down through what's called the federal funds rate. That will control interest rates. And therefore, they can control the money supply, the amount of money in circulation. M1, not M2, M1. I know you're all thinking, we want more monetary policy. Someday. Nobody wants more monetary policy. But the federal funds rate is this. The Federal Reserve is setting the interest rate that banks loan each other money. And so if they raise the rate, it's more difficult for banks to get money. And therefore, it's harder for them to borrow money, it's harder for them to loan more money out. So that's how it works. So let's go back to the boom bust cycle. We'll do this in class, the boom bust cycle. So remember, we have the boom, and when there starts to be over speculation, a bubble is formed, overproduction is formed. What does the Federal Reserve do? Does it raise or lower the federal funds rate? It raises it. Very good. You raise it, you make it more difficult to borrow money to speculate. So that's how they try to tamp down the economy to avoid a bust. Well, let's say you get the bust and no one's buying anything. What do? This should be obvious. You lower. Where are we at now? Well, like when you guys were born, they were dropping it to 0 because the economy was in free fall. Thanks a lot. Once again, I'm going to need you people. Huh? Yeah, thanks. Now the economy started picking up about 2014. It got better. Then that went started with Obama. It kept going fairly good through President Trump. And actually kind of looked like there might be a bubble forming, then COVID hit. So they started raising interest rates, and then they cut them dramatically during COVID. And then the US economy started booming compared to the rest of the world about 2022. And they raised interest rates again dramatically. Our economy was the envy of the world. Where are we at now? It's not quite down, but they're lowering interest rates a little bit. The last time they met, they meet every month. They kept it the same because they don't know what's going on. It appears as though the economy is shrinking, but prices are still way too high, partially because of the tariffs. And so they don't know what to do with the interest rates. They're going to meet again in about 2 weeks, the Federal Reserve Board, and decide interest rates. And you want to see the Federal Reserve Board? You want to see some heads? Here are some heads. That's the Federal Reserve Board. And it's these people decide. The head of the Federal Reserve is Jerome Powell, but his term is about done. President Trump has picked somebody. President Trump is desperate to cut interest rates. And these are the heads of the district bank. Some vote, some don't. Let me add one more thing I forgot. I forgot to add one more thing. The Federal Reserve is supposed to act outside the political system. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. The idea being that they won't raise or lower the interest rates for political gain for whoever's in power. A little bit. But every president tries to influence it. Most famously, right now, President Trump last night, in the longest State of the Union address ever, President Trump said and badgered the Federal Reserve companies. He wants them to cut. He believes they'll raise the stock market. So it could also lead to a bubble in the crashing economy. So let's get to Wilson and race policy. Wilson would be the American president to formally segregate the government. It was already pretty much segregated before. Remember, we mentioned the Army was segregated. And both Republican and Democratic presidents were segregating the government after the 1890s. Including, remember, the party of Lincoln, the Republicans by then were segregationists too. And the Democrats were. Most Democrats. And so here's some national parks. So legal area coffee shop and cottages, picnic grounds for Negroes, segregated national parks. Now they were already kind of segregated, but it became the law. And it would not begin to change until a little bit in the 40s and 50s, but mostly 1960s. But ironically, in 1913, the Lincoln Memorial was finished, and that would be segregated. The irony should just be overwhelming. The Lincoln Memorial segregated. Now, here are two pictures of the Lincoln Memorial. This is 1960s. Look at the way the Lincoln Memorial looked in 1913. You see all the swampy land? Did I tell you about TR and skinny dipping? Yes. And look at all the little legs there. I just find that hilarious. So if you go to the Lincoln Memorial today, there's every national park has a gift shop. And the gift shop is in the basement. Well, when they first made it, the basement or bathroom literally had bathrooms for Negroes. That's what it said. And that's now where the gift shop is, which I find is kind of weird now, but segregated part where white people can be involved. Everyone not white on the side. What irony. And so when people look back at Wilson, his rating is what people have rated president has gone down because of this. And he's a mixed bag because he has these reforms, which a lot of people think are very good, especially the FTC. And then you have this. And that gives the hard part about judging people in the past. They're dead. You can't change what they believe. So you have to pick good things and you have to weigh that against things that are bad. We say that for virtually every president or every person, and then decide what we can learn from it. So, a review for civil rights. So the civil rights era to go attack Jim Crow would begin coinciding with the progressives. And the progressives will be split. Teddy Roosevelt was no leader in civil rights. Of course, Woodrow Wilson was. So just to review, I showed you this once before we had Reconstruction. Remember, Booker T. Washington believed in economics over equality. So we can't push for getting rid of Jim Crow laws, segregation. Du Bois, but everyone in the US called Du Bois, equal rights, certainly NAACP. We mentioned this once before at the end of Reconstruction and the New South, but it's another one to put up here because this is going on right in the progressive era. So today, people who call themselves progressives very much believe in civil rights, but that certainly was not the roots of it. And that's Du Bois. I like that picture. I love that mustache. And which one of the two would be invited to have lunch with Roosevelt? Yeah, but he had to go to the back door. Couldn't go to the front, and you know why. So.
Sorry.
Actually, that's refreshing. You didn't think that way. Yeah. So. Oh, look at that. Isn't that nice? And that begs the question, are you ready? It's overwhelming. Everybody wants one except that chick with the bow tie. I never liked him. Who likes bow ties? You would make a bow tie work. Yeah, you would make it work. When I was in first grade, I think I wore a bow tie almost every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Mile City.
In beautiful Mile City. Let's write a thesis then. So practice. Remember the why, something you're playing, something to tie the A, B, and C together. So you're gonna write one. And I gave you, before you look at the question, just everyone, let's put the question together. Explain how the progressives wanted to reform the economic system of the United States going into the 20th century. I gave you lots of ways they wanted to reform. Like maybe 15. And it goes two different ways. You can go to the general ways that the progressives wanted to reform. But you can also give very specific laws and actions they do. Remember, I gave you state reforms, all the laws passed through Roosevelt and Wilson. But also I gave you characteristics of the progressives that said why they wanted to reform. And you need something of why to tie it together, economic, political, or social. And remember, it says the economic system. Hey, what's the economic system of the United States? If you add that, that could be your why. Okay, you got a few minutes? Go. A few minutes adds in 2. If you need to look back in your notes, just remind yourself that I gave you lots of ways. And you can combine the two. There's so many ways to approach this. This would be a good question to get on the test of the 4th Republic. I need it. We haven't had progressives in a while. While you do that, this. Oh, shoot. Okay, when you're done, make sure you have a good why, something to claim it together, and then an A, B, and C. And then about the A, B, and C, that would be your body paragraphs are essentially 3 short IDs. The thing about things is you can write a short ID, Anybody want me to look at theirs real quick, or? I'll look at a couple, and then why don't we do the exchange thing? I like that. Very good. Yeah. So all three you can do easy. Ah, good. I got it. Okay. Works good. You know, social economic little Rob, but it fits you put each one, that works very well. Land research fit, good A, B, and C. I'll look at a couple more. And if you're done, let's go ahead and exchange too with your neighbor. Quick look at it. Those things you have more antitrust than anything. Jefferson's on the 2, Hamilton's on the 10. Yeah, at least that's what I. Go to exchange, go look at somebody else's. Go to exchange, look at your neighbor and see if you can identify the A, B, and C, the Y. Very good. You have monopolies down there, you have open middle class, you can tie it all together for laws. You can relate it all back to the open middle class. Looks good.
I know it.
For exchange, did anybody read a thesis statement that arguably changed your life? You're gonna walk out of here now with your head in the clouds, so different of a person. It happens all the time. Nobody? Anybody like to read their thesis statement? I'm looking for volunteer. Yes, please.
The progressive wanted to reform the economic system of the USA for capitalism because of new election reforms, conservation, and economics.
Yeah. You throw capitalism, economic reform, capitalism, your Y, and you have very good A, B, and C. And if you relate each of those body paragraphs back to that Y, you're in great shape, good organized estimate. Anybody else want to read this? Want to die? You want me to volunteer somebody? People are overwhelmingly coming up. People on the street are begging to read their thesis statement. Zach, thank you for something to play, reading yours. Progressive wanted to reform that system. Very good. You have that all work together, three good forms. You can call these social Darwinism, three a good A, B, and C. Good thesis statement. This would be a good question. This kind of question. We haven't had a progressive one on the AP exam. We as in students. I'm not taking the exam. Here's mine. It's a beauty, but probably not a heck of a lot different. Reforming capitalism, that's the economic system. That is my economic system. So I have the Y there. Antitrust, regulation, social justice. Who put the Clayton Antitrust Act for one of their very good? Who put down just regulation? Just regulation. Who put down social justice? Good. Who put down experts? We'll get experts. Very good. Yeah. Who did that conservation? All right, great one. Who did 3 hours of Clayton? Did anyone do like state reforms, like referendum, initiative, voting? Anybody like more people voting, more democracy? That's fine, but those are just examples of things you could use. Did anyone put down middle class? Middle class reformers, middle class? Very good. Those are all things you can use, and think about it. Your body paragraph then will just be topic sentence, explain it, couple examples, explain how it answers your thesis statement, boom. It's all of it. All right. So, new heading. We're just going to start right now. Just a couple things really quick. Are you ready for the new heading? Are you excited? Well, it's going to change everything. It's hard to find something more important in our history. Let's go back. World War I. And this is the scary part. No, they did not call it World War I while it was going on. They were hoping that there wouldn't be another one. That's what they know, which makes it very tragic. Yeah. The Great War was used really common, or sometimes the World War. And there have been world wars before, wars for empire. The Revolutionary War was a worldwide war, but never to this scope and never to these states. Before, almost every war in the era that we've covered in class were just for a little bit of territory, expanding your empire, rarely a fight to the finish. Civil War was, I guess. But this one is total war for ultimate victory or ultimate or total failure, and would change the world. We are still living in the shadow of World War I. Almost all the political problems that were not resolved with World War I still exist today. Most importantly, all the problems in the Middle East have their roots in World War I. And you could go on to everything in Europe, or for that matter, Ukraine right now, all in Europe. Here's a pretty good picture. Now they're posing, and it's 1918, but what army is that? What side? Germans. They're the Germans. And this shows three really good things that kind of would personify the war when people think about it. Trench, machine guns, and what are they wearing? The gas masks. And that would personify the hell of this war. The first industrial war. So when you say the Industrial Revolution changed the world, well, the first major industrial war would be the proof of that. Here's another one. Here's Germans bringing supply mules to the front. And you'll notice not only do we have gas masks, but you have gas masks rigged up flames. You notice they're not covering their eyes. Of course, we'll all be blind and work till they die. So, one of the things about this is they knew war was coming. There was talk of war. 20 years before the war, this was a real craze to draw maps of Europe as caricatures and almost always about ready to fight. Because Europe was a massive armed camp. And so, yeah, do you like Russia? And but this is the German map, so you know it's the Germans and the Austrians with the bayonets in the mouth of the Russians. And I like Italy. France and the Germans are kicking it. Belgium is a loaded rifle towards France. Look at Britain, it's kind of funny. You might also notice, okay, they couldn't figure anything in Denmark. Did you see the country that nobody liked? Serbia. And that's how they drew this. And so, so many, I'll show you a couple more. I think they're pretty cool. To write down the factors that led to war, and we'll quit right there. We'll do the factors tomorrow. War one. We have stories, we have thesis statements. We did so much today. Don't you feel proud? And everyone has the map. So make sure to hold on to that packet.